October is National Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month, and it's a super important topic that I think we cover. Last week, I did a video on miscarriage specifically and the shame that women experience and the partners of the women experience related to that. And that's due to a lot of misconceptions and misperceptions on what miscarriage and loss is. So be sure to check that out if you missed it. Today, we're going to be talking about how you can support somebody else that's going through a miscarriage. So thanks for being here. I'm Laura Nicola. I'm your faithful therapist. So like I said, miscarriage is very stigmatized. It's kept very secret, and there's a lot of shame around that. I focused on shame in the last video, but today we're going to be talking about how can I support somebody that's going through a miscarriage? What do I say to them? What do I not say to them? And how can I educate myself more on this topic so that I might be helpful? So I appreciate you wanting to learn about this because, again, grief related to miscarriage is oftentimes not as acknowledged as grief related to the loss of somebody that's, full term, even a stillbirth baby, perhaps. But it's equally as important to grieve the loss of a miscarriage just as much as any other loss. So let's talk about first what things not to say to somebody that's going through a miscarriage. There might be good intentions behind these statements. And, for the person going through the loss, it's important to remember, okay, this other person, they might not understand. They might not get it. They're trying to be helpful. They're trying to be supportive. But if you're watching this, you can now know better about things not to say. So what are some of those things? Well, let's start with not saying, hey, at least you can get pregnant. Not helpful. Because this implies, oh, it's okay, you'll be able to get pregnant again, which isn't always the case. And it is very dismissive of the loss of that particular child. So let's not say that. What else shouldn't we say? Oh, well, at least it was early on in the pregnancy. What does that have to do with anything? As soon as a woman finds out they're pregnant, there is an association of emotion with that baby, even if they can't feel the baby kicking yet, or even if they haven't thought of names yet, or even if they haven't told their significant other yet. There is still such an attachment to that baby that acknowledging, oh, it's at least it's early on, not helpful. And again, dismissive. When it comes to our faith, again, a lot of good intention here. But saying things like, well, the baby's with, God at least. Or you at least have an angel looking after you now in heaven. Or, well, clearly it wasn't meant to be. It wasn't God's timing. I can see, again, the intent behind that, trying to be helpful. But sometimes for women, even if they are Catholic or Christian, that's not helpful to hear. Because that might be something that they can attach to later on, but in the moment of that loss, they just want to be validated in that loss. They don't want to hear kind of the potential justification of how it could be better, because you're kind of you're implying, well, get over it because, at least they're in heaven with God. You're not acknowledging that they need time to go through that grief, and that's okay. Try not to say, oh, you're young, you'll have more babies. It's kind of similar to my first point. They might not. And again, the age of a person, has nothing to do with the loss. A loss is a loss. Saying things like, oh, well, at least you haven't blank. The at least kind of statements are big. At least you haven't thought of names. At least you haven't created the nursery yet. At least you haven't told that many people yet. At least, this won't impact your job until, next year. none of those at least statements are helpful because, again, they're dismissive of that person's experience of loss. So you're probably hearing a theme here. These might be well-intentioned, but ultimately, most of them are dismissive of the emotion that the person is going through. And that's the worst thing we could do for somebody that's going through grief, is just say, just get over it. That's essentially what it is, boiled down, and maybe a little extreme. But that's maybe how it comes across to those experiencing the loss of, you should probably just get past this. Not true. Okay? So what do we do instead? How do we support a person that's going through this loss? Well, we do the opposite of dismissing the emotion. We listen to the emotion. We empathize with the emotion. We validate and affirm the emotion. We try to normalize the emotion. You know, it's such a stigmatized thing that we feel like we have to keep it a secret if we go through a miscarriage. But the more you talk to people, the more you hear how common it is. Miscarriage happens 1 in 5 pregnancies. So, you know, if you're listening and you're affirmative and you're validating and you're normalizing it, you know, it doesn't feel like, oh, I feel better now because I know this is normal. Of course not. But the more you talk to other people, you know, and hear, oh yeah, my aunt went through a miscarriage. Oh, really? What was that like for her? You know, oh, my friend just had her, you know, 2nd miscarriage. Gosh, that must be so hard. Okay, like I don't feel as alone, because it feels so isolating. So you, as a supportive person, can, again, do the opposite of dismissing the emotion and try to validate it. Also, be prepared to talk about the baby. You know, we might feel uncomfortable bringing it up, or we might feel uncomfortable checking in and saying, hey, how are you doing? We might feel uncomfortable, you know, if you know, you have a child yourself, you know, and bringing that baby along. But the more you ignore those questions, or the more you avoid the topic, the more stigmatizing it can be. So a simple question, you know, hey, how are you doing with this? You know, or just like a text message, hey, it's been a few weeks, how are you doing? You know, or hey, you know, do you want to talk about this? I'm here. Or when can we talk about it? That's a better question. You know, just offering to be there for that person is huge. You know, and not avoiding the subject. As uncomfortable as you may feel, trust me, that other person wants to talk about it, even if, you know, you don't think that they would. Also, I mean, just being aware of the variety of like experiences and reactions that a person can have is helpful. You know, people lie on a spectrum with grief. Some show it, some, you know, very visibly, and some are more internal about it. You know, some people have kind of more extreme reactions or symptoms related to it, and some hide them, or some honestly don't. So just kind of being aware of like the plethora of emotions, you know, or even like physical kind of symptoms that they could experience is just good to like look out for, you know. And like you can always, you know, just again ask. You know, you don't want to say, wow, you should really talk to somebody about that. No, well, just talk to them about it. And then say, have you thought about talking to somebody else about it? You know, whether that's a spiritual director or a counselor, you know, or maybe a friend that you know that has gone through it themselves, something like that. You could just make a simple suggestion. But I think the point there is to encourage expression of grief. Because again, the more we avoid it or deny it or keep it a secret, the worse we feel about it. So if you're inviting that person into a dialogue or a conversation about it, they might shut you down. They might say, yeah, no thanks, don't want to talk about that. And that's okay. But your offer is important to them. And my guess is that more often than not, they'd be willing to talk about it, and they want to talk about it, as painful as it is. So just kind of be there for them as well. You know, people create meal trains, you know, when babies are born, you know, create a meal train for a miscarriage. You know, that person is struggling. Or, you know, be there to You know, maybe they have other children in the house. Be there to, you know, help out with some chores or run errands or just go babysit for a minute, you know. Try to just offer support in specific, concrete ways like that too. So hopefully this is helpful. Again, things to do, things not to do. Most of them involve things to say, support emotionally. Most of the things we want to avoid are just dismissive of the emotions or the loss in general. So just be aware of those. And you are by watching this video. So thank you for being here and, you know, helping me destigmatize this loss. And, you know, leave me comments, leave me questions. Make sure you subscribe here if you haven't. Follow me on my social media accounts and stay tuned for more informative videos. So have a great day. Blessings.